In a grand Cornish manner, a champagne toast turns deadly as a gentle reverend collapses, foam at his lips, and a cryptic note slips into the hands of Hercule Poirot. The play begins with a fall. Who poisoned the glass? Why does a killer stage murders as acts in a theatrical tragedy? And what dark secret from Sir Charles Cartwright's past threatens to unravel a web of betrayal, revenge, and hidden heirs? Step into three-act tragedy where every scene drips with suspense, and the truth is the final curtain call.
Chapter 1. The Overture of Suspicion. The Cornish coast stretched like a velvet ribbon under the twilight sky, its cliffs jagged against the fading ember of sunset. Crow's Nest, Sir Charles Cartwright's grand manor, perched atop one such precipice, its windows glowing like the eyes of a watchful beast. Inside, the air thrummed with the clink of crystal and the murmur of polished voices as a select gathering of England's elite mingled in the chandelier-lit drawing-room. The occasion was a dinner party, ostensibly to celebrate Sir Charles's return from his triumphant West End production, but the undercurrent of anticipation suggested something more, a performance yet to unfold. Hercule Poirot, diminutive yet commanding, stood near a marble fireplace, his patent leather shoes reflecting the flicker of flames. His mustache, a masterpiece of waxed precision, twitched as he surveyed the room. Sir Charles, the host, was a vision of theatrical charm, his silver hair catching the light as he regaled a cluster of guests with tales of his latest play, The Masked Masquerade. His laugh boomed, but Poirot's keen eyes caught the faintest tremor in his hand as he raised a flute of champagne. Among the guests was Reverend Stephen Babington, a mild-mannered cleric whose spectacles gleamed with nervous excitement. His wife, Mary, clung to his arm, her lavender dress a soft contrast to the room's opulence. Lady Cynthia Edgware, a sharp-tongued dowager, draped in emerald silk, held court near the grand piano, her laughter slicing through the hum of conversation. Dr. Bartholomew Strange, a neurologist with a penchant for cryptic aphorisms, leaned against a bookcase, his dark eyes darting between faces as if diagnosing their secrets. And then there was Angela Sutcliffe, a rising starlet whose auburn curls and coy smiles drew admiring glances from the younger men, including Oliver Manders, a brooding journalist with ink-stained fingers and a perpetually skeptical frown. Poirot sipped his tisane, a concession to his delicate stomach, and listened. The room was a symphony of motives, each guest a note in a melody he had yet to decipher. Sir Charles had invited him under the guise of friendship, but Poirot suspected a deeper purpose. The man was a master of stagecraft, after all, every gesture calculated, every word a line delivered with intent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sir Charles called, his voice rising above the chatter. He stood at the head of the room, a crystal glass raised high. A toast to new beginnings, to art, and to the mysteries that bind us. Glasses clinked, and the guests echoed his sentiment, although Poirot noted the hesitation in Reverend Babington's movements. His hand trembled as he lifted his champagne, his lips barely touching the rim before he set it down. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Was it nerves, or something more? The moment shattered like glass. Babington's face contorted, a gasp escaping his throat as he clutched his chest. His glass slipped, spilling golden liquid across the Persian rug. Mary screamed, a sound that pierced the room's elegance as her husband staggered and collapsed, his body crumpling like a marionette with severed strings. Foam flecked his lips, his eyes wide with terror. "Stephen!" Mary cried, dropping to her knees beside him. Dr. Strange pushed through the crowd, his medical instincts overriding the shock that froze the others. He knelt, pressing fingers to Babington's neck, but his expression darkened. "He's dead," Strange announced, his voice clipped. Pulse stopped. "This is no heart attack." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Lady Cynthia's fan snapped shut, her eyes narrowing. Angela Sutcliffe clutched Oliver Mander's arm, her face pale beneath her rouge. Sir Charles stood frozen, his glass still raised, as if the toast had never ended. Poirot stepped forward, his presence calming the chaos like a conductor silencing an orchestra. "Mesdames et messieurs, remain calm," he said, his Belgian accent lending authority to his words. "Do not touch the body or the glass. This is no accident." "No accident?" Lady Cynthia's voice was a whip-crack. "You're suggesting murder, Monsieur Poirot, in Sir Charles's own home?" "I suggest nothing," Poirot replied, his eyes glinting. "I observe. And what I observe is a man dead, with foam at his mouth, and a glass that may hold more than champagne."
Dr. Strange stood, wiping his hands on a handkerchief. "Poison," he said quietly, meeting Poirot's gaze. "Likely cyanide, given the speed and the symptoms. But how? The champagne was poured from the same bottle." Poirot knelt beside the body, his movements precise. He examined the glass, its rim unmarred, the liquid within unremarkable to the eye. Yet his nose detected a faint, bitter almond scent, a hallmark of cyanide, subtle but unmistakable. He rose, his mind already weaving threads of possibility. "Sir Charles," Poirot said, turning to the host, who had lowered his glass but not his guard, "who poured the champagne?" "I did," Sir Charles replied, his voice steady but his eyes flickering. "From a single bottle, opened before you all. I poured for everyone, including myself." He gestured to his own glass, untouched on a side table. "And yet," Poirot mused, "only Monsieur Babington is dead. Curious, no?" Mary Babington sobbed softly, cradling her husband's hand. "He was a good man," she whispered. "Who would do this? He had no enemies." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind remained razor-sharp. "Madame, even the gentlest soul may cross paths with darkness. We must discover why." The guests were ushered to the library, where a fire crackled, but did little to warm the chill of suspicion. Poirot remained in the drawing-room, joined by Dr. Strange, who seemed eager to assist. The police had been summoned, but Poirot knew time was his ally. Evidence could vanish as swiftly as a stage illusion. He examined the scene with meticulous care. The spilled champagne had soaked into the rug, but the glass lay intact, its rim unmarred, the liquid within unremarkable to the eye. Yet his nose detected a faint, bitter almond scent, a hallmark of cyanide, subtle but unmistakable. He rose, his mind already weaving threads of possibility. "Strange," Poirot said. "The poison was in the glass, not the bottle. But how was it delivered to one man alone?" Dr. Strange frowned. "A sleight of hand, perhaps. Someone could have slipped it in during the toast." "Possible," Poirot conceded, "but risky. The room was crowded, eyes everywhere. And why Babington? A cleric, unassuming, with no apparent wealth or influence." "Perhaps he knew something," Strange suggested. "A secret worth killing for." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A secret, oui. But whose?" As he paced the room, Poirot's foot brushed against something beneath a velvet curtain. He bent and retrieved a folded piece of paper, its edges crisp, its ink fresh. He unfolded it, revealing a single line in elegant script. "The play begins with a fall." No signature, no address, just a taunt, slipped into the scene like a stage direction. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A playwright's touch," he said softly. "This is no random act. This is theater." He pocketed the note, its weight a promise of answers. The police arrived, their boots heavy on the parquet floor, and Poirot relinquished the scene to their care, though not without a quiet word to the inspector about preserving the glass and bottle. He rejoined the guests in the library, where tension hung like smoke. Sir Charles stood by the fire, his charm dimmed but not extinguished. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, "this is a tragedy, but surely an isolated one. A madman, perhaps, targeting poor Babington for reasons we can't fathom." "Madness," Poirot replied, "is rarely so precise. This was a calculated act, Sir Charles, and I suspect it is but the first scene." Angela Sutcliffe, seated on a leather sofa, shivered despite the fire's warmth. "First scene? You think there will be more?" Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face. "In a play, mademoiselle, every act builds to a climax. We must ensure this one ends before the curtain falls again." Oliver Manders, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice sharp. "You're saying one of us did this? That's absurd. We're not murderers." "Absurdity," Poirot said, "is often the mask of truth. Tell me, Monsieur Manders, what brought you here tonight? You are a journalist, oui? Yet I see no notebook, no pen." Manders flushed. "I'm off duty. Sir Charles invited me as a friend." "And yet," Poirot said, "you observe as keenly as I. What did you see during the toast?" Manders hesitated, his eyes flicking to Angela. "Nothing unusual. Everyone was laughing, talking. Babington seemed fine until he wasn't." Lady Cynthia snorted. "Typical. Men always miss the details. I saw Mary Babington fussing over her husband, adjusting his tie just before the toast. Could she have slipped something into his glass?" Mary gasped, her face crumbling. "How dare you? I loved Stephen." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. "Accusations without evidence are but noise. Madame Babington, did you touch your husband's glass?" "No," she said, her voice trembling. "I only fixed his tie. He was nervous, always fidgeting at these grand affairs." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. He turned to Sir Charles. "This manor, Sir Charles, has many rooms, many secrets. May I have your permission to explore?" "Of course," Sir Charles said, though his smile was strained. "Anything to help." As the guests dispersed to their rooms under the watchful eye of a constable, Poirot lingered in the library. He approached the grand desk, its surface cluttered with scripts and playbills from Sir Charles's productions. One caught his eye, a program for The Masked Masquerade, its cover depicting a masked figure holding a goblet. Beneath it, in fine print, was a dedication, "To those who play their parts unseen." Poirot's fingers traced the words, his mind racing. The note, the poison, the theatrical flourish. It all pointed to a mind that saw life as a stage, death as a spectacle. But why Babington, a man of the cloth, seemingly innocuous, yet chosen as the opening act? He stepped onto the terrace, the sea air sharp and bracing. The stars above were a silent audience, and Poirot felt the weight of their gaze. The note in his pocket burned with possibility. The play begins with a fall. Babington's death was no accident, but a curtain raiser, a signal that the true drama was yet to unfold. As he returned to the house, Poirot caught a glimpse of movement in the garden, a shadow slipping between the rose bushes. He paused, his hand on the terrace rail, but the figure was gone, swallowed by the night. A guest? A servant? Or the playwright himself, setting the stage for the next act? Poirot's lips curved into a determined smile. "Very well," he murmured. "The play has begun, but Hercule Poirot does not applaud until the truth takes its bow." He re-entered the manor, his steps light but purposeful, the note a silent challenge in his pocket. The first act had ended with a body on the floor, but the second would be his to direct, and he would not rest until the mask of the murderer was torn away, revealing the face beneath. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Wings. The fog rolled in from the Thames, cloaking London's West End in a shroud of mystery that suited Hercule Poirot's mood. The cryptic note from Crow's Nest, "The play begins with a fall," had burned itself into his little gray cells, its ink a challenge that pointed him to the Alhambra Theatre, the beating heart of Sir Charles Cartwright's theatrical empire. As Poirot stepped from his taxi onto the cobbled street, the theatre's marquee loomed above, its golden letters proclaiming the masked masquerade in a flourish of promise and peril. The air carried the tang of coal smoke and anticipation, and Poirot's mustache quivered with the thrill of the chase. Inside, the Alhambra was a cathedral of artifice, its crimson curtains swaying like whispers of forgotten sins. Rehearsals were in full swing, the stage awash with actors in half-costumed splendor, their voices clashing in a cacophony of scripted passion. Poirot slipped into the shadows of the auditorium, his black overcoat blending with the gloom. He had no invitation, but a discreet word with the stage manager, a wiry man named Reggie Voss with a perpetual squint, granted him access as a consultant for Sir Charles. The lie was a small price for truth. The stage was set for a masquerade ball scene, with actors twirling in masks of velvet and gilt. At its center stood Angela Sutcliffe, her auburn curls catching the spotlight as she delivered a monologue of betrayal with a conviction that made Poirot pause. Was her talent merely theatrical, or did it mask a deeper guile? Nearby, Sir Charles directed with the fervor of a maestro, his gestures sharp, his eyes darting to the wings where stagehands scurried like specters. Poirot's attention shifted to a young stagehand, Tommy Pierce, whose lanky frame and nervous hands betrayed a man out of place. Tommy was hauling a crate of props, his eyes flitting to the catwalk above, where ropes and pulleys dangled like a hangman's noose. Poirot noted the boy's unease, the way his fingers fumbled with a coil of rope, and filed it away for later scrutiny. As the rehearsal paused for notes, Poirot approached Sir Charles, who greeted him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Monsieur Poirot, a surprise to see you so soon after the tragedy." His voice held a note of strain, like a string tuned too tight. "Tragedy, Sir Charles, is but the first act. The note I found at Crow's Nest suggested your theatre as the stage for the next. I am here to ensure no further curtains fall." Sir Charles's smile faltered. "A note? I know nothing of it. But you're welcome to observe. My cast is impeccable, my crew loyal. You'll find no villains here." "Villains," Poirot said, "wear many masks. May I speak with your stagehand, Tommy Pierce? He seems preoccupied." Sir Charles hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. Tommy's a good lad, just green. You'll find him in the prop room." Poirot made his way backstage, navigating a labyrinth of flats and costumes. The prop room was a cluttered cave, its shelves groaning with candelabras, swords, and goblets that gleamed with deceptive innocence. Tommy stood at a workbench, polishing a brass lantern, his hands shaking. "Monsieur Pierce," Poirot began, his tone gentle but probing, "you seem troubled. Is it the work or something more personal?" Tommy's eyes widened, the lantern nearly slipping from his grasp. I am fine, sir. Just the hours are long, and the theatre's got its ghosts, you know." "Ghosts?" Poirot's mustache quivered. "Or perhaps secrets? You were at Crow's Nest last night, were you not? A servant, perhaps, pouring champagne?" Tommy's face paled. "No, sir, I wasn't there. I swear it. I was here, fixing props till midnight." "Alone?" Poirot pressed, his gaze unyielding. "Yes," Tommy stammered. "Well, mostly. Reggie was in and out, checking the rigging." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the alibi's fragility.
Before he could press further, a scream tore through the theater, sharp and raw, like a blade through silk. It came from above, where the catwalk swayed in the half-light. Poirot and Tommy rushed to the stage, joining a cluster of actors and crew staring upward. There, dangling from a snapped rope, was Tommy's coat, caught on a pulley. But Tommy himself was nowhere to be seen until a sickening thud echoed from the stage's trapdoor, now yawning open like a hungry mouth. The cast gasped as Poirot leapt to the edge, peering into the substage gloom. Tommy lay sprawled on the wooden floor below, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle, a trickle of blood pooling beneath him. A vial, small and glinting, rolled from his outstretched hand, its contents leaving a faint acrid scent in the air. "Cyanide," Poirot murmured, his voice grim. "The same as Babington." Sir Charles appeared, his face ashen. "My God, Tommy, how did this happen?" Poirot descended the trapdoor's ladder, his movements precise despite the chaos above. He knelt beside the body, noting the vial's label, unmarked, but its contents unmistakable. The trapdoor's mechanism was slick with oil, its spring tampered to release under weight. This was no accident, but a scene staged with lethal precision. "Everyone, remain where you are," Poirot commanded, climbing back to the stage. "This is murder, and the murderer is among us." The cast erupted in protests, Angela's voice rising above the din. "Murder? Tommy was just a stagehand. Why would anyone—" "Because," Poirot interjected, "he knew something, or saw something, that made him a threat, just as Reverend Babington did." Reggie Voss pushed forward, his squint more pronounced. "This is madness, Poirot. The catwalk's old, the rope's frayed. It was an accident."
"An accident," Poirot said, "does not leave a vial of poison in a dead man's hand, nor does it explain a trapdoor rigged to kill." He turned to the crew, his eyes scanning their faces. "Who was on the catwalk last? Who handled the ropes?" A burly rigger named Ned Baxter spoke up, his voice gruff. "I checked the rigging this morning. Everything was sound. Tommy was up there an hour ago, fixing a light. Nobody else." Poirot's gaze lingered on Ned, whose hands were calloused but steady. "And you, Monsieur Baxter, where were you when the scream was heard?" "In the wings," Ned said, his jaw tight. "Adjusting the backdrop. Ask anyone." Angela nodded. "I saw him there, fussing with the ropes." Poirot filed the detail away, his mind a whirl of connections. The note from Crow's Nest, the cyanide, the theatrical setting, it all pointed to a killer who saw murder as performance art. But why Tommy? A stagehand, like Babington, seemed an unlikely target unless he held a piece of the puzzle. He approached the trapdoor again, examining its edges. A faint scratch mark caught his eye, barely visible in the wood grain. He traced it with a gloved finger, revealing a hidden latch, its mechanism coated with a waxy residue that smelled faintly of almonds. The trapdoor had been sabotaged, the poison applied to ensure death if the fall failed. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, "this is a mind of meticulous cruelty." He summoned Sir Charles to a private corner of the theatre, away from the prying eyes of the cast. "Sir Charles, this theatre is your domain, yet 2 deaths, both poisoned, both staged, have occurred under your watch. What do you conceal?" Sir Charles's eyes flashed with indignation. "Conceal? I am as horrified as you, Poirot. Tommy was a good lad, loyal. And Babington? Why, I barely knew him." "Yet you invited him," Poirot said. "And now another falls. Tell me, what is the masked masquerade truly about? The program speaks of parts unseen. Is there a secret within its script?" Sir Charles hesitated, his fingers tightening on his cane. "It's just a play, Poirot.
A tale of love and betrayal, set at a masquerade. Nothing more. Poirot's smile was thin. Nothing is ever just with you, Sir Charles. I will read the script myself. As the police arrived, their lanterns casting stark shadows, Poirot retreated to the auditorium with a copy of the script, its pages worn from rehearsal. He sat in a plush seat, the stage now a crime scene cordoned off by constables. The script was a labyrinth of dialogue and stage directions, but one line stood out, scrawled in the margin in a hand not unlike the note from Crow's Nest. The second act demands a sacrifice. Poirot's pulse quickened. The killer was scripting their crimes, each death a scene in a twisted production. But what was the motive? Revenge? Ambition? Or something darker woven into the fabric of Sir Charles's world? He slipped out to the alley behind the theater, where fog curled like a living thing. The stage door creaked as he stepped into the night, his eyes catching a flicker of movement, a figure in a hooded cloak slipping around the corner. Poirot followed, his steps silent on the wet cobblestones, but the figure vanished into a maze of back streets, leaving only the echo of footsteps and a single feather, black and glossy, on the ground. He picked it up, twirling it between his fingers. It was no ordinary feather, but one from a costume, its edge tipped with gilt, a prop from the masked masquerade. The killer was taunting him, leaving clues as bold as stage lights. Back inside, Poirot confronted Angela Sutcliffe, who lingered near the stage, her eyes red-rimmed. "Mademoiselle, you saw Ned Baxter in the wings. Did you see Tommy on the catwalk?" She shook her head, her curls bouncing. "No, I was running lines. But I heard Tommy arguing with someone earlier, in the prop room. I couldn't make out the words, but they sounded scared." "Of whom?" Poirot pressed. "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "It was muffled, like they were behind the flats." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. An argument, a rigged trapdoor, a poisoned vial. The pieces were forming a pattern, but the picture remained elusive. He approached Reggie Voss, who was barking orders at the crew to secure the stage. "Monsieur Voss," Poirot said, "you were in and out of the prop room last night, oui? Did you see Tommy with anyone?" Reggie's squint tightened. "No, sir. Tommy was alone, like he said. I was checking the rigging, like always." "Always?" Poirot's tone was mild, but his eyes were steel. "Yet a rope snapped, a trapdoor failed. Your diligence, it seems, was not enough." Reggie bristled, but said nothing, turning back to his work. Poirot watched him go, noting the man's quick glances toward the catwalk. Fear or guilt? As the night deepened, Poirot lingered in the theater, the script in his lap, the feather in his pocket. The Alhambra was a stage of shadows, its secrets hidden in the wings, its players masking their truths. Tommy's death was no mere accident, but a second act in a drama that began with Babington's fall. The killer was close, their steps echoing in the dark, their next move already scripted. Poirot rose, his resolve as sharp as the fog outside. The play continues, but Hercule Poirot will rewrite its ending. He stepped into the alley, the feather a silent vow, the theater's lights dimming behind him. The second act had closed with blood, but the third would be his to command.
Chapter 3. The Intermission of Illusions. The London dawn broke with a reluctant shimmer, its light filtering through the smog to cast a pallor over Baker Street. Hercule Poirot sat in his impeccably ordered flat, the cryptic note from Crow's Nest and the gilt-tipped feather from the Alhambra Theatre laid out on his mahogany desk like relics of a puzzle yet unsolved. The deaths of Reverend Stephen Babington and Tommy Pierce weighed on his mind, each a meticulously staged act in a drama of poison and deception.
The script of The Masked Masquerade, pilfered from Sir Charles Cartwright's theatre, lay open beside a steaming cup of tisane, its marginalia haunting. The second act demands a sacrifice, but what of the third? A knock at the door heralded the arrival of Captain Arthur Hastings, his pipe puffing like a locomotive, his face alight with the eager curiosity of a man who thrived on Poirot's mysteries. "Morning, Poirot. I came as soon as I got your wire. 2 murders, you say? Sounds like a devil of a show." "Indeed, mon ami," Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. "But this is no mere performance. The killer scripts their crimes with the precision of a playwright, and I suspect Sir Charles's world holds the key. You know the theatre, Hastings. What whispers have you heard?" Hastings settled in, his tweed jacket rumpled from the train. "Well, the West End's buzzing about Sir Charles's latest triumph, but there's talk of bad blood. Seems he jilted a playwright years ago, a chap named Victor Crane, who swore revenge. And then there's Angela Sutcliffe. Rumor has it she's more than just his leading lady, if you catch my drift." Poirot's mustache twitched. An affair, perhaps. And this Crane, where is he now? "Vanished, they say. Dropped off the scene after Charles's masquerade outshone his own play. Some reckon he's lurking, biding his time." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A man scorned is a dangerous prop, Hastings. We must return to the Alhambra tonight. The stage is set for another act, and I will not be caught in the wings." By evening the fog had thickened, wrapping the theatre in a cloak of secrecy. The Alhambra was alive with a different energy tonight. A private soirée in the green room, a glittering affair to toast the cast's resilience after Tommy's death. Poirot and Hastings slipped in among the guests, the air heavy with perfume and cigar smoke. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across velvet drapes, and a long table groaned under silver trays of canapés and decanters of port. Sir Charles presided like a king, his charm a polished mask, though Poirot noted the tightness in his jaw. Angela Sutcliffe, radiant in sapphire silk, flitted among the guests, her laughter a touch too bright. Reggie Voss, the stage manager, hovered near the bar, his squint darting to every corner. And Ned Baxter, the rigger, stood apart, his broad shoulders hunched as he nursed a glass of whiskey. And there was a new face, Lionel Greer, a flamboyant producer with a mane of silver hair and a voice that carried like a foghorn. He was Sir Charles's financier, his presence a magnet for ambitious actors and weary creditors alike. Poirot, unobtrusive in his black suit, circulated with a glass of mineral water, his ears attuned to every whisper. Hastings, ever the social chameleon, struck up a conversation with Angela, his pipe a prop to disarm her. "Dreadful business with Tommy. You must be shaken, Miss Sutcliffe." She sighed, her eyes flickering to Sir Charles. "It's awful, Captain. Tommy was sweet, always fixing props with a smile. I can't imagine who'd want him dead." "Perhaps someone with a grudge," Hastings ventured. "Against Sir Charles, maybe. I hear he's made enemies in the theatre world." Angela's smile tightened. "Charles is a genius. Geniuses attract envy, not murderers." Poirot, overhearing, noted her defensiveness. He approached Lionel Greer, who was regaling a group with tales of Broadway triumphs. "Monsieur Greer," Poirot said, "your investment in the Masked Masquerade is bold, but does it not carry risks, with death so close to the stage?" Greer's laughter was a bellow. "Risks! Theatre's all risk, Monsieur Poirot. Charles delivers, and I bankroll dreams. Tommy's death was a tragedy, but the show must go on." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone mild. "But what if the show itself is the motive?" Greer's eyes narrowed, but before he could reply, a toast was called. Sir Charles raised a goblet, a prop from the play, its stem carved with vines. "To resilience," he declared, "to art that defies tragedy." The guests echoed the toast, glasses clinking like a chorus of bells.
Lionel Greer, ever the showman, seized a matching goblet from the table, its crystal catching the light. "To profits and passion!" he roared, draining it in one gulp. The room froze as Greer's face twisted, his hand clutching his throat. The goblet slipped, shattering on the oak floor, its shards glinting like fallen stars. He staggered, gasping, his eyes bulging with the same terror Poirot had seen in Babington's face. The producer collapsed, his silver hair splayed across the rug, foam flecking his lips. "Cyanide!" Poirot snapped, his voice cutting through the screams. "Do not touch the glass! Hastings, secure the door!" Hastings sprang to action, barring the exit as guests pressed back, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Poirot knelt beside Greer, confirming the telltale almond scent. The goblet's fragments were scattered, but a few drops of liquid remained, their menace invisible but lethal. Sir Charles, pale as the moonlight streaming through the window, stammered, "This is madness! 3 deaths? Poirot, what is happening?" "A performance, Sir Charles," Poirot said, rising. "A killer stages their crimes with poison and precision, each death a scene in their play. But this time they have left a clue." He pointed to the table, where a prop dagger from the masked masquerade lay among the decanters. Its hilt wore an inscription, etched in silver. "Act 2 begins with betrayal." The words echoed the script's marginalia, linking the murders in a chilling narrative. Poirot turned to the guests, his gaze a spotlight. "Who placed this dagger here? It was not on the table when I arrived." Silence fell, broken only by Angela's shaky voice. "It's a prop, Monsieur Poirot. It's used in the play's climax. Anyone could have brought it from the prop room." "Anyone," Poirot agreed, "but only one with intent. Monsieur Voss, you oversee the props. Did you authorize this?" Reggie Voss shook his head, his squint almost comical in its intensity. "No, sir, the dagger was locked in the prop cage. Someone must have pinched it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Then we have a thief as well as a murderer, and I suspect they are the one and the same." He moved to the table, examining the decanters. The port was untouched, its seal intact, but a small vial, nearly hidden beneath a napkin, caught his eye. It was empty, its glass frosted with residue. Poirot lifted it with a handkerchief, sniffing cautiously. Cyanide, again. Slipped into Monsieur Greer's goblet during the chaos of the toast. Ned Baxter stepped forward, his voice gruff. "You sayin' one of us did this, right here in front of everyone?" "We," Poirot said. "The killer is bold, a master of misdirection. They use the crowd as their curtain, the toast as their cue." Angela clutched her shawl, her eyes darting to Sir Charles. "But why Lionel? He was just a producer." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "because he knew too much, or because his death advances the plot. Tell me, Mademoiselle Sutcliffe, did you see anyone near the table before the toast?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "It was a blur, everyone moving, laughing. I was talking to Charles." Charles nodded, his voice tight. "We were discussing the play's third act. I didn't see the table." Poirot's gaze shifted to Hastings, who had returned from securing the door. "Mon ami, you were near the bar. Did you observe anything unusual?" Hastings frowned, puffing his pipe. "Well, I saw Reggie fussing with the decanters, but that's his job, isn't it? And Ned was carrying a tray of glasses earlier." Ned bristled. "Carrying, not pouring. I'm no waiter." Poirot filed their words away, his mind a kaleidoscope of motives. Babington, a cleric with no apparent enemies. Tommy, a stagehand with nervous hands. Now Greer, a producer whose wealth and influence made him a target.
The killer was weaving a tapestry of death, each thread tied to Sir Charles's world. He approached the fireplace, where a mirror reflected the room's chaos. Something glinted in its frame, a sliver of paper, tucked into the gilt. He plucked it free, unfolding it to reveal another message. The third act unveils the traitor. The script was identical to the crow's nest note, its ink fresh, its intent chilling. "This," Poirot said, holding the paper aloft, "is the killer's signature. They taunt us, mes amis, but they also reveal themselves. The traitor is close, and I will unmask them." The police arrived, their presence a stark contrast to the green room's elegance. Poirot handed over the vial and the note, instructing the inspector to test the goblet's fragments. As the guests were questioned, Poirot drew Hastings aside, his voice low. "Hastings, mon ami, we must dig deeper into Sir Charles's past. This Victor Crane, find what you can. And Angela Sutcliffe. Her loyalty to Charles is fierce, but is it love, or something more calculated?" Hastings nodded, his pipe glowing. "I'll nose around the theatre crowd. Someone's bound to talk." Poirot returned to the script, its pages now a map of the killer's mind. He flipped to the third act, where the play's hero unmasks a traitor at a masquerade ball, only to face a poisoned chalice. The parallel was too precise to be coincidence. The killer was not just mimicking the play, they were living it. He approached Sir Charles, who stood by the window, staring into the fog. "Sir Charles, this Victor Crane, your rival, what did he lose to you?" Sir Charles's jaw tightened. "Everything. His play was a flop, his reputation ruined. He blamed me, but it was his own hubris. He disappeared 5 years ago." "And if he returned," Poirot asked, "would he kill to ruin you?" Sir Charles's eyes flickered. "He might, but Victor was no murderer, just a bitter man." Poirot nodded, unconvinced. "We shall see. For now I suggest you lock your doors, Sir Charles. The third act approaches, and the traitor will strike again." As the guests dispersed under police escort, Poirot lingered in the green room, the dagger's inscription burning in his mind. Act 2 begins with betrayal. The killer was among them, their mask seamless, their motive hidden in the shadows of Sir Charles's empire. But Poirot was no mere audience member. He was a director of truth, and the stage was his to command. He stepped into the fog, the note and feather in his pocket, the script under his arm. The intermission was over, and the curtain was rising on a truth that would shake the Alhambra to its foundations.
Chapter 4. Rehearsal of Reckoning. The wind howled along the Cornish coast, its wail a chorus to the gathering storm, as Hercule Poirot's hired car wound through the cliffs toward the derelict Pavilion of Stars, a forgotten relic of seaside grandeur where Sir Charles Cartwright had summoned his beleaguered company. The deaths of Reverend Babington, Tommy Pierce, and Lionel Greer weighed like lead in Poirot's mind, each a scene in a killer's meticulously scripted tragedy. The notes, "The play begins with a fall," "The second act demands a sacrifice," "The third act unveils the traitor," and the gilt-tipped feather from the Alhambra Theatre were talismans of a mind that saw murder as art. Tonight, Poirot would stage his own act, a clandestine gathering to draw the murderer from the shadows. The pavilion loomed against the bruised sky, its spires cracked, its windows dark save for the flicker of lanterns within. Once a stage for Victorian operettas, it was now a skeleton of its former glory, its boards creaking underfoot as Poirot entered, Captain Hastings at his side. The air swilled of salt and decay,
and the distant crash of waves echoed like an impatient audience. Sir Charles had agreed to Poirot's plan, a rehearsal to discuss the future of the masquerade, but his eyes had betrayed unease, as if he sensed the net tightening. Inside, the company assembled in a cavernous hall, its faded murals depicting mermaids and shipwrecks. Sir Charles stood at a makeshift podium, his silver hair catching the lantern light. Angela Sutcliffe, wrapped in a fur stole, sat near Reggie Voss, whose squint seemed sharper in the gloom. Ned Baxter, the rigger, leaned against a pillar, his hands restless. Mary Babington, pale but resolute, had insisted on attending, her presence a silent demand for justice. And there was a new figure, Clara Wren, a playwright and Sir Charles's former protégée, her sharp features softened by a scarf, but her eyes glinting with ambition. Poirot had learned from Hastings that Clara had once been close to Victor Crane, the vanished rival who haunted Sir Charles's past. Poirot took the floor, his diminutive frame commanding despite the vastness of the hall. Mesdames et messieurs, we are here not for a play, but for truth. 3 souls have fallen, Babington, Pierce, Greer, each poisoned, each a scene in a killer's meticulously scripted tragedy. Tonight we rehearse not lines, but motives. Speak freely, for silence is the ally of guilt. Sir Charles cleared his throat, his charm strained. Monsieur Poirot, this is a grim way to rally a company. Surely the police— The police, Poirot interrupted. See evidence. I see the heart, and the heart of this killer beats with theatrical precision. Let us begin. He turned to Clara Wren, whose pen scratched notes in a leather-bound journal. Mademoiselle Wren, you knew Victor Crane. His play failed where Sir Charles triumphed. Did he speak of revenge? Clara's lips pursed, her voice cool. Victor was passionate, not vengeful. He left London broken, but he'd never kill. You're chasing ghosts, Monsieur Poirot. Ghosts leave no notes, Poirot countered, producing the latest message from the green room. The 3rd act unveils the traitor. This is no spectre, but a hand among us. Mary Babington's voice trembled as she spoke. My Stephen was no traitor. He was kind, devout. Why would anyone target him? Poirot's gaze softened. Madame, your husband's death was the opening act, chosen perhaps for his innocence, to shock, to set the stage. But what did he know? Did he ever speak of Sir Charles's past? Mary shook her head, tears glinting. Only that he admired Charles's charity work. Stephen helped with a fundraiser once, something about an orphanage. Poirot's mustache twitched. An orphanage, a thread to tug. He turned to Angela. Mademoiselle Sutcliffe, you defend Sir Charles fiercely, yet you heard Tommy Pierce argue in the prop room that day. Was it with him? Angela's fingers tightened on her stole. I told you, it was muffled. I couldn't see who. Tommy was upset, that's all. Upset or threatened? Monsieur Baxter, you were near the prop room that day. Did you hear this argument? Ned's jaw clenched. I was haulin' flats. Didn't hear nothin' but Tommy mutterin' about late hours. Poirot paced, his steps deliberate, the creak of the boards a counterpoint to his thoughts. 3 deaths, all cyanide, all staged. Babington at a dinner, Pierce on a trapdoor, Greer with a prop goblet. Each a performance, each with a note. But why? Revenge? Ambition? Or a secret buried in Sir Charles's world?
He paused before Reggie Voss. "Monsieur Voss, you control the props, the rigging, yet a knife appeared. A trapdoor failed. Are you careless or complicit?" Reggie's squint hardened. "I'm no killer, Poirot. I check everything twice. Someone's tampering, but it ain't me." "Tampering requires access and motive." He turned to the group. "Let us play a scene. Each of you confess a secret, something that binds you to this tragedy. Truth may flush the serpent from its coil." The company hesitated, glances darting like moths. Clara spoke first, her voice sharp. "Fine. I wrote a play for Charles years ago. He promised to produce it, then scrapped it for his own. I lost everything, my savings, my dreams." Sir Charles flinched. "Clara, it wasn't personal. Your play wasn't ready." "Not ready, or not yours?" Angela's voice cut in, soft but firm. I borrowed money from Lionel Greer to fund my career. He was pressuring me to repay, but I couldn't. I didn't tell Charles." Sir Charles's eyes widened. "Angela, why didn't you come to me?" She looked away, her cheeks flushed. Ned Baxter shifted, his voice gruff. "I took a bribe once to slip a critic backstage. Didn't think it hurt anyone." Reggie Voss muttered, "I forged a letter of recommendation to get this job. Charles never checked."
Mary Babington's voice was barely audible. "Stephen found an old letter in the church archives about a child given up years ago. He thought it might be tied to Charles's charity. He never told me more." Poirot's eyes gleamed. A child, a letter, secrets that fester like wounds. "Sir Charles, what say you?" Sir Charles's hand shook, but his voice was steady. "I have no secrets worth killing for. My life is the stage, my heart an open script." Poirot's smile was thin. "Then let us test that script." He clapped his hands, and Hastings, stationed by the hall's entrance, dimmed the lanterns, plunging the room into a twilight of suspicion. "A killer thrives in darkness. Let us see who moves." The air grew thick, the silence broken only by the wind's moan and the sea's restless surge. Poirot's ears caught a faint creak, a footstep on the balcony above, where the pavilion's old rigging hung like a spider's web. He signaled Hastings, who lit a match, its flame revealing a figure poised to release a massive spotlight, its beam aimed at Poirot's head. "Arrêtez!" Poirot shouted, his voice a whip-crack. The figure froze, then fled, their footsteps echoing as they vanished into the pavilion's upper reaches. Hastings gave chase, his boots pounding, but returned breathless, shaking his head. "Lost them in the rafters," he panted, "but I found this." He held up a vial, its glass frosted with cyanide residue, tucked behind a beam. Poirot's pulse quickened. This vial was meant for me, no? A fourth act, unwritten but planned. He turned to the group, their faces pale in the flickering light. "Someone here knows the pavilion's secrets, its passages, its traps. Who has been here before?" Clara raised her chin. "I came here as a girl for summer shows, but I've not been back in years." Ned grunted. "I fixed rigging here last season. Place is a death trap." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A death trap or a stage? Monsieur Baxter, you know ropes. Could you rig a spotlight to fall?" Ned's fists clenched. "I could, but I didn't. I was down here with you." But the trap was set before we arrived." He moved to the podium, where Sir Charles's script lay open. A page was torn, its edge revealing a sketch, a family tree, its branches linking names Poirot recognized: Charles, Victor Crane, and a third, smudged but suggestive of a child. "Oh, mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, "a legacy of betrayal. Sir Charles, this tree, explain it. Sir Charles's face drained of color. It's an old idea for a play. Nothing more. Nothing more. Poirot's voice was steel, or a secret worth killing to keep. Before Sir Charles could respond, a scream pierced the hall. Angela stumbled from the shadows, her stole tangled, her face ashen. "There's something in the dressing room. I saw it, a figure, in a mask." Poirot and Hastings raced to the room, a cramped space littered with moth-eaten costumes. A mirror stood against the wall, its surface cracked, but reflecting a chilling sight. A mask, black and gilt, hung on a hook, its eyes hollow. Beneath it, a note pinned to the wall. "The traitor hides in plain sight." Poirot's fingers brushed the mask, its texture familiar, the same as the feather from the Alhambra. "The killer plays their part well, but they leave too many props." He turned to the group, now clustered at the door. "This mask is from your play, Sir Charles. Who had access to the costumes?" "Anyone," Sir Charles said, his voice hoarse. "The costume room is never locked." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The family tree, the orphanage, the mask, all pointed to a motive rooted in Sir Charles's past, a child perhaps abandoned, now seeking vengeance. But who? Clara, with her bitterness? Angela, with her debts? Or someone yet unseen, directing from the wings? As the storm broke, rain lashing the pavilion's roof, Poirot gathered the group. "We leave now, but mark my words. The killer is among us, their script unfinished. I will find them before the curtain falls." Sir Charles, his composure fraying, stepped forward. "Monsieur Poirot, I must go. I need air." He slipped through a side door, vanishing into the rain-soaked night. Poirot watched him go, his eyes narrowing. "Hastings, follow him, discreetly." Hastings nodded, disappearing into the storm. Poirot turned to the others, his voice calm but unyielding. "Return to your homes, but know this. Hercule Poirot sees through masks. The next act will be mine." As the company dispersed, Poirot lingered, the mask in his hand, the note in his pocket. The pavilion creaked around him, its shadows alive with secrets. The killer had struck and fled, but their trail was clear. A path of poison, props, and promises of betrayal. Poirot stepped into the rain, his resolve as fierce as the tempest, ready to rewrite the killer's script with a denouement of truth.
Chapter 5. The Dress Circle of Despair. The Cornish cliffs stood sentinel under a moonless sky, their jagged edges swallowed by the night, as Hercule Poirot's car rattled along a winding path to St. Agnes Abbey, a crumbling relic turned artist's retreat where Sir Charles Cartwright had fled after the Pavilion of Stars' near-fatal rehearsal. The murders of Reverend Stephen Babington, Tommy Pierce, and Lionel Greer formed a grim triptych in Poirot's mind, each death a scene in a killer's theatrical opus, marked by cryptic notes and a gilt-tipped feather. The latest note: "The traitor hides in plain sight," and the black mask from the pavilion burned in his pocket, clues to a motive rooted in betrayal and a secret family tree. Tonight, Poirot would tighten the noose, drawing the murderer into the open under the Abbey's ivy-choked arches. The Abbey loomed like a Gothic spectre, its stone walls etched with centuries of secrets, its windows glowing with the flicker of oil lamps. Poirot stepped from the car, his patent leather shoes crunching on gravel. Captain Hastings at his side, his pipe unlit but clutched like a talisman. Hastings had trailed Sir Charles from the pavilion, reporting his hurried flight to this secluded haven, where the company had been summoned for a final act reading of The Masked Masquerade. The air was thick with the scent of damp moss and impending rain, and Poirot's mustache quivered with the certainty of confrontation. Inside, the Abbey's great hall was a cathedral of shadows, its vaulted ceiling lost in darkness, its walls lined with easels and half-finished canvases that seemed to watch the proceedings.
Sir Charles stood by a roaring fire, his silver hair dishevelled, his charm frayed like an old costume. Angela Sutcliffe, her sapphire eyes shadowed, sat near Clara Wren, whose sharp features were taut with suspicion. Reggie Voss, the stage manager, paced near a stack of scripts, his squint a permanent mask. Ned Baxter, the rigger, leaned against a stone pillar, his hands fidgeting with a coil of rope. Mary Babington, her face etched with grief, clutched a handkerchief, her presence a quiet demand for answers. A new figure joined them, Eleanor Vance, the wardrobe mistress, her wiry frame draped in a shawl, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. Poirot took the floor, his diminutive stature belied by the authority in his voice. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his Belgian accent cutting through the whole's chill, "we gather in this place of art and solitude, but there is no sanctuary from truth. 3 murders, Babington, Pierce, Greer, each poisoned, each a scene in a play of vengeance. A 4th was planned at the pavilion with me as the victim. Tonight, we unmask the director of this deadly drama." Sir Charles' voice was hoarse. "Monsieur Poirot, this is madness. I came here to escape the chaos, not to fuel it. My company is no nest of killers." "Escape, or to rewrite the script? The family tree I found at the pavilion suggests a secret, a child, perhaps, tied to your past. Speak, Sir Charles." Sir Charles's hands trembled. "A child? Nonsense. That sketch was a whim, a plot for a play. I have no heirs, no secrets." Clara Rensloud was sharp as glass. "No secrets. You buried my career, Charles, and Victor Crane's. Perhaps this child is his, seeking justice." Poirot's gaze shifted to Clara. "Mademoiselle Wren, your bitterness is noted. But did you forge the notes? Did you wield the poison?" Clara's eyes flashed. "I'm a writer, not a murderer. Victor's gone, dead or disappeared. I've no reason to kill." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her defiance. He turned to Eleanor Vance, whose fingers twisted her shawl. "Madame Vance, you craft the costumes, the masks, the feather, the black mask from the pavilion. Your work, no?" Eleanor's voice was a whisper. "I made them, yes, but they're props, Monsieur Poirot. Anyone could have taken them." "Anyone," Poirot agreed, "but not everyone leaves a note. The traitor hides in plain sight. Who is this traitor, madam?" Eleanor shrank back, her eyes flicking to Reggie. I don't know. I just sew, mend, keep things tidy." Poirot's attention turned to Reggie. "Monsieur Voss, you confessed to forging a letter to secure your job. Have you forged others? Perhaps the notes that taunt us?" Reggie's squint tightened. "I told you, I'm no killer. I manage props, not poison." "And yet," Poirot said, "props become weapons in this play." He paced, his steps echoing on the stone floor. "Let us consider the stage. Babington died at a dinner, Pierce on a trapdoor, Greer with a goblet. Each death theatrical, each with cyanide. But why these victims? A cleric, a stagehand, a producer, unless they knew a truth worth killing for." Mary Babington's voice broke the silence. "Stephen mentioned an orphanage letter tied to Charles's charity. Could it be a child abandoned?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "A child, oui, a thread that binds these deaths. Madame Vance, you have worked for Sir Charles long. Did you ever hear of such a child?" Eleanor's hands stilled. Once, years ago, I overheard Charles and Victor Crane arguing. Something about a promise broken, a child left behind. I thought it was just gossip." Sir Charles's face darkened. "Gossip! Victor was a dreamer, weaving tales to excuse his failures. There was no child."
Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Then why does this ghost haunt us?" He produced the family tree sketch. Its smudged maims a silent accusation. "This is no mere play, Sir Charles. It is a map of motive." Before Sir Charles could respond, a clatter echoed from the far end of the hall, where a trestle table held scripts and quills for the reading. Eleanor Vance, who had drifted toward it, gasped and stumbled back, her shawl catching on a chair. She clutched her chest, her face contorting as she collapsed, a quill slipping from her hand to the floor. Foam flecked her lips, her eyes wide with terror. "Cyanide!" Poirot shouted, rushing to her side. Hastings barred the door as the company froze, their gasps a chorus of dread. Poirot examined the quill, its tip glistening with a faint residue, its inkwell nearby exuding the bitter almond scent of death. "She was poisoned," Poirot said, his voice grim. The quill, dipped in cyanide, was her undoing. But how? She was writing, nothing more. He lifted the quill, noting a faint scratch on its nib, a deliberate alteration. The inkwell's contents were lethal, a trap set for an unsuspecting hand. Eleanor's last words, gasped as Poirot knelt beside her, were a fractured plea. "The mirror, it lies." "Mon Dieu!" Poirot murmured. His pulse quickened. He rose, his eyes scanning the hole until they settled on a tarnished vanity mirror propped against a canvas, its frame carved with cherubs. He approached, his reflection distorted in its cracked surface. A faint seam caught his eye, and with a gentle press, a hidden compartment sprang open, revealing a cache of papers, forged telegrams, a locket etched with initials V.C., and a photograph of a young woman holding a child, her face hauntingly familiar. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, "Victor Crane's legacy." He turned to the group, holding the locket aloft. These initials, V.C., Victor Crane, and this child, perhaps the key to our tragedy. Who among you knows this woman? Angela's hand flew to her mouth. "That's my mother, but she died when I was young. She never spoke of Victor." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Your mother? And yet you claim no tie to Crane?" "I didn't know," Angela cried. "Charles raised me after she died. He's been like a father." Sir Charles's face crumpled. "Angela, I never told you. Your mother and Victor were close once. I swore to protect you, to keep you from his shadow." Clara Wren's voice was ice. "Protect her or hide your guilt. You ruined Victor, Charles. Did you ruin his child too?" Poirot raised a hand, silencing the accusations. "Enough. The locket, the telegrams, they point to a child, perhaps Angela, perhaps another, seeking vengeance for a father wronged. But Eleanor, why her?" He examined the papers, his fingers tracing a telegram addressed to Eleanor, its text a threat, "Reveal nothing or join the others." Madame Vance knew too much. She was silenced before she could speak. Ned Baxter's voice was gruff. "This is insane. Eleanor was just the seamstress. What could she know?" "More than you think," Poirot said. "She overheard secrets, stitched them into her silence, but the killer feared her tongue." He turned to Reggie. "Monsieur Voss, you were near the table. Did you see Eleanor take the quill?" Reggie shook his head. "I was checking scripts. Didn't see nothing." Poirot's eyes flicked to the mirror, its cracked surface a metaphor for the fractured truth. "The mirror lies," he murmured. "It shows us what we wish to see, not what is. Someone placed that quill knowing Eleanor would use it." He moved to the table, inspecting the scripts. One was open to the third act of the Masked Masquerade, where a character dies by poisoned ink, a chilling echo of Eleanor's fate. A new note was tucked inside, its script familiar. The final act crowns the victor. "The killer mocks us," Poirot said, his voice low. "They weave their crimes into the play, daring us to see." Hastings, his pipe now lit, spoke up. "Poirot, this child business. Could Angela be the killer, avenging her mother?" Angela gasped, tears streaming. "I'd never! I loved Eleanor, all of them. I'm no murderer." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was relentless. "Mademoiselle, your pain is real, but your past is a shadow. We must find the child, the true heir of this vengeance." He turned to Sir Charles. "You knew Victor Crane's secrets. Did you know his child?" Sir Charles's shoulders sagged. I suspected. Victor spoke of a daughter, but I never saw her. I thought it was his madness talking." "Madness," Poirot said, "or truth. We shall see." He signalled Hastings. "Mon ami, search the Abbey's records. An orphanage, a child. There will be traces." As Hastings slipped away, Poirot gathered the group by the fire, the storm outside now a roar. "The killer is here, watching, waiting. But they have overplayed their hand. The mirror, the quill, the locket, these are their props, and they will betray them." Clara's voice was sharp. "You're accusing us all, Poirot. What's next? Another death?" "No," Poirot said, his eyes steel. "The next act is mine. I will stage the truth, and the traitor will fall." As the company dispersed to their rooms under the watchful eye of a local constable summoned by Hastings, Poirot lingered by the mirror, its secrets now his own. The locket's initials, the telegrams, Eleanor's dying words, they formed a constellation of clues pointing to a child whose pain had birthed a killer. The Abbey's walls seemed to close in, their shadows alive with whispers of betrayal. Poirot stepped into the corridor, the storm's howl a fitting overture to the final act. The dress circle of despair had claimed another victim, but he would ensure it was the last. The truth was near, hidden in plain sight, and Hercule Poirot would tear away its mask.
Chapter 6. Curtain Call for the Culprit. The storm had relented, leaving St. Agnes Abbey bathed in a silver dawn that pierced the stained glass windows of its great hall, casting kaleidoscopic shards across the stone floor. Hercule Poirot stood at the heart of the hall, his black suit pristine despite the night's turmoil, his mustache a beacon of resolve. The murders of Reverend Stephen Babington, Tommy Pierce, Lionel Greer, and Eleanor Vance formed a grim quartet, each death a meticulously staged act in a killer's theatrical vendetta. The notes: the play begins with a fall, the second act demands a sacrifice, the third act unveils the traitor, the final act crowns the victor, and the gilt-tipped feather, the black mask, and the locket etched with V.C. were threads in a tapestry of betrayal. Tonight, Poirot would weave them into a denouement, unmasking the murderer in a final, unyielding curtain call. The hall was transformed into a stage of judgment, its long table cleared, save for a projector, its beam ready to cast spectral images of the crimes. The surviving company, Sir Charles Cartwright, Angela Sutcliffe, Clara Wren, Reggie Voss, Ned Baxter, and Mary Babington sat in a semicircle of carved chairs, their faces taut with dread and defiance. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his pipe unlit, his eyes scanning the group like a sentinel. Above, the chandelier swayed gently, its crystals tinkling like a warning bell, a stark reminder of the spotlight that nearly claimed Poirot at the Pavilion of Stars. Poirot stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding, cutting through the hall's heavy silence. "Mesdames et messieurs, we have played a deadly game, scripted by a mind that sees murder as art. 4 lives lost: Babington, Pierce, Greer, Vance, each poisoned with cyanide, each a scene in a play of vengeance. Tonight, Hercule Poirot directs the final act, and the traitor will take their bow." Sir Charles, his silver hair dulled by fatigue, rose unsteadily. "Monsieur Poirot, this obsession with a traitor is tearing us apart. I beg you, end this madness." "Madness?" Poirot's eyes gleamed like polished steel. "No, Sir Charles, this is method. The killer has left us a script, notes, props, a family tree that points to a child, a secret born of your past.
Let us unravel it." He activated the projector, its beam casting images onto a white sheet strung across the hall. The crow's nest dining room, the Alhambra's trapdoor, the green room's shattered goblet, the pavilion's rigged spotlight, and the abbey's poisoned quill. Each image was a chapter in the killer's drama, linked by cyanide and cunning. Poirot turned to the group, his gaze a spotlight. The first act, Babington, a cleric, dies at a dinner, poisoned by a glass only he drank from. Why him? Because he found a letter in his church archives, hinting at a child tied to Sir Charles's charity. A harmless man, but a spark to ignite the play. Mary Babington clutched her handkerchief, her voice a whisper. Stephen was curious, but he meant no harm. He thought the letter was a curiosity, nothing more. "Oui, madame," Poirot said, but to the killer it was a threat. The second act, Tommy Pierce, a stagehand, falls through a rigged trapdoor, a vial of cyanide ensuring his silence. He argued with someone in the prop room, perhaps overhearing a secret. Reggie Voss shifted, his squint defiant. "I told you I didn't hear no argument. Tommy was jumpy, that's all." Jumpy, Monsieur Voss, or fearful. The third act, Lionel Greer, dies by a poisoned goblet, his wealth a target, his knowledge a danger. And the fourth, Eleanor Vance, the wardrobe mistress, felled by a quill dipped in death, her last words, "The mirror, it lies," pointing to a hidden truth. He produced the locket from the Abbey's mirror, its initials VC glinting in the projector's light. Victor Crane, the vanished playwright, is the key. His child, born of a liaison your mother, Mademoiselle Sutcliffe, kept secret, seeks vengeance for a father wronged. Angela's face crumpled, tears streaming. "I didn't know. My mother never spoke of Victor. Charles raised me, protected me." "Protected," Poirot echoed, "or concealed. Sir Charles, you knew of this child, did you not?" Sir Charles' shoulders sagged, his voice a rasp. I suspected. Victor claimed a daughter, but he was unstable, his claims wild. I thought it was a lie to smear me." "A lie?" Clara Wren's voice cut like a blade. "You stole Victor's play, his life. If he had a child, they'd have every reason to hate you." Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. "Let us test this hate." He turned to the projector, displaying the family tree from the pavilion, its smudged names now clear in his mind. This tree links Charles, Victor, and a child. But who is the heir? Not Angela, whose grief is genuine. Another, hidden among us. He paced, his steps deliberate, the chandelier's tinkle a counterpoint to his words. The killer is no mere avenger. They are a director, staging each death to mirror the masked masquerade. Babington's toast echoes the play's opening feast. Pierce's fall mimics its tragic duel. Greer's goblet reflects its poisoned chalice. Vance's quill parallels its fatal letter. And the notes, each a stage direction, leading us to this moment. Ned Baxter's voice was gruff. "You're saying one of us is this child? I'm no playwright's spawn. I'm a rigger no more." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but riggers set traps. The spotlight at the pavilion was your domain, Monsieur Baxter. Did you rig it for me?" Ned's fists clenched. "I told you I was with you when it fell." "Oui," Poirot said, "but traps are set in advance." He turned to Reggie. "And you, Monsieur Voss, confessed to forging a letter. Did you forge the notes, planting them to taunt us?" "I'm no killer. I manage props, not murders." "Props, yes, like the mask, the feather, the quill, all from your domain. But the truth lies not in props, but in motive. The killer seeks to destroy Sir Charles, to crown themselves victor. And I know who. He stepped to the projector, switching to a new image. A photograph from the locket showing a young woman and a child, the woman's face a mirror to Clara Wren's. Mademoiselle Wren, you are Victor Crane's sister, non? Not his protégé, but his kin. The child in this photo is yours, born of a union you hid, raised in the shadow of your brother's ruin. Clara's face paled, her journal slipping to the floor. You're mad, Poirot. I have no child. Do you not? Poirot produced a telegram from the mirror's cachet, its text damning. The child knows. Silence them. This was sent to Eleanor Vance, warning her to keep your secret. But she knew too much, as did Babington, Pierce, and Greer. Your child, raised on tales of Victor's betrayal, became your instrument of revenge. Clara laughed, a brittle sound. A child. I'm a playwright, not a mother. You have no proof.
Poirot's smile was cold. Proof is in the details, mademoiselle. The notes written in your hand match the script's marginalia. The feather, the mask, stolen from Eleanor's stores but placed by you, and the quill, your weapon, dipped in cyanide you procured from a chemist in London under a false name. He turned to the group, his voice rising. But the final clue is the child themselves, not a myth, but a presence among us. Step forward, Ned Baxter. Ned's eyes widened, his rope coil dropping. Me? You're barking, Poirot. I'm no one's kid. No, Poirot said. You are Victor Crane's son, raised by Clara after your mother's death. You learned rigging to infiltrate Charles's company, to stage the murders as acts of vengeance. Babington's letter threatened to expose your lineage. Pierce overheard your plans in the prop room. Greer knew of Clara's dealings with Victor. Vance saw you take the mask. You killed them all, directed by your aunt, to ruin the man who destroyed your father. Ned lunged, his fist raised, but Hastings was faster, pinning him against the pillar. Clara screamed, "No, he's innocent!" "Innocent!" Poirot's voice was thunder. You rigged the trapdoor, the spotlight. You slipped cyanide into goblets and quills, guided by your notes. But you overplayed your hand, Mademoiselle Wren. The family tree, the locket, they betrayed you. Ned's defiance crumbled, his voice a torrent of rage. Charles ruined my father, took his play, his pride, left him to die in a gutter. Clara showed me the truth, gave me purpose. I wrote the notes, set the traps. I wanted Charles to suffer, to see his world collapse before I finished him. Sir Charles sank into a chair, his face ashen. Monsieur Poirot, I never saw this coming. Victor's pain, his child. How did I miss it? You saw only the spotlight, Sir Charles, Poirot said gently, but the shadows hold the truth. He raised a glass of water, a toast to closure. To life, mes amis, to truth, which outlives all performances. The company echoed his toast, their voices soft but resolute. Poirot walked into the dawn, the abbey's shadows fading behind him. The locket, the notes, the mask, they were props in a drama now ended, their secrets laid bare by his little gray cells. The stage of deception was dark, the curtain fallen, and Hercule Poirot walked away, his heart light with the triumph of truth.